Now let's take a look at lighting in Arnold. And we're first going to look at standard Maya lights and how to use those as Arnold lights. Now I have a simple scene here, and if we go into lighting and do use all lights, you'll see that this light is casting on this scene. Now I'm going to go ahead and go into render settings, and let's make sure that we're in the Arnold renderer. I'm going to leave everything at the default. And then let's go into Arnold Render View and see what this creates. And as you can see, when we go into Run IPR, we get very little. All I'm getting is the glow of this stereo. And so this light is not bright enough, essentially. So I'm going to go ahead and select this light. And let's take a look at some of the attributes here. Now we have our standard Maya light attributes. And then if we scroll down, we also have Arnold attributes. So we're going to start with the basic Maya light attributes. Now the reason this is not showing up is that by default, a Maya light is set to no decay. And Arnold lights are always real world, so they always have quadratic fall off. So I need to go ahead and bring up the intensity of that light. So I'm actually going to bring it up quite a bit. So bring it up to say 10,000. And when I do, you're going to start to see a little bit of light here. And if I add in another 0 here, bring it up to 100,000, you're going to start to see it even more. Now, the problem with this is pretty obvious, is that when I have an intensity of 100,000 and no decay on the scene, I'm not going to be able to see anything in my viewport. So this basically renders my viewport lighting inoperative. But the way you do this is you basically set it to what Arnold is doing, and you set that to quadratic, and now we have something that works. Now, if I want, I can bring this up even more, say to 500,000 or something like that, and now I'm getting a level of light that's pretty accurate. So now once I've got the light in the same range here, I can still control all of my standard Maya spotlight controls, such as cone angle and penumbra angle. Now, Arnold itself has a number of attributes for its own light. So if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there is a Arnold rollout. And this will allow me to change how the lighting works in the scene. Now, in an Arnold light, we have color temperature. So if you want, you can turn on a specific temperature for the light, so you can match this light to real-world lighting. We also have exposure, and what this does is it amplifies the light. So if I want to, I could dial my light back down to, say, an intensity of 1 or so and turn on no decay. And I could actually control the level of my lighting using exposure. Now, this isn't probably the recommended procedure, but it does work. So if I bring my exposure up to, say, something like 18, I'll start to get light in the scene. I'm going to bring that back down to 0. Now, exposure essentially just creates additional f-stops on your lighting. So every single increase in exposure will multiply it by 2. So 1 is twice as much, 2 is 4 times 16, and so on. Let's go ahead and put this back on quadratic, and let's type in 500,000. Get that lighting back in order. Now let's go through some other Arnold controls here. One of the most important ones is samples, and this determines the quality of the shadows. So if we see the shadow here around the TV set, I can zoom in here by just rolling my mouse button. So I have a pretty sharp shadow behind this TV set. But if I want to, I can make the radius of the light bigger. So if I type in, say, a large number such as 100, you'll see that this shadow is starting to get a little bit fuzzier. Now, when we create a larger light, it's casting its light over from a larger area, so the edges of your shadows will be fuzzier. Now, the problem with that is that we need more samples to get the quality that we need. So if you have a larger light, you need to bump up the number of samples to get the quality of the shadows that you want. This will also increase render time. Now, we can also just turn off shadows. If I want, I can turn off cast shadows, and the shadows go away for that particular light. And then we can also dial down the visibility of the light in any given channel. So if I dial down the diffuse for this light, all I'm getting is specular and all the other parameters here. So I can actually make a light not do specularity. So it can be a light that just creates flat lighting. I can do a light that does not do subsurface scattering or indirect lighting and so on. And then further down, we can do things such as light filters, which allow you to control the light by adding filters to them. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight into how to use standard Maya lights as Arnold lights. Now remember, the key factor here is the decay rate. You want to set your Maya light to quadratic.